Just recognize the Marda Asra and his Rebbitzin, and I would not get on a plane a week before Pesach for anyone other than my cousin and his mishpacha. So when he called, or Jonathan reached out. So the truth is, I'm sure many of you, again, it's a hectic time for everyone. For Rabbanim, it's an incredibly even more hectic time. I can't say that to a group of Jewish women that it's a more hectic time. It's not right. But it's a very hectic time. But in our family, when we see what Rabbi and Rebbe and Shrek are building here in Hollywood, Florida, it's like an overwhelming source of nachas for our mishpacha. So when the invitation came and I had an opportunity to help in some small way, it was a schus that I could not forego. So I think I'm not even going to have a chance to work on my tan because I got here once the sun set. I'm going to leave before the sun goes up. But at least I have an opportunity, Mirza Hashem, to be able to share a little bit of Torah. And halavai, you should all just really recognize the incredible gift that you have in your community with this incredible power couple and their family. And halavai, you should all be zocheh and Mirza Hashem to collaborate together to build something truly beautiful, lahagdil Torah la'adira. So I have some Mara Makomos that I just want to hand out. Thank you. Rivka's full service. She picks me up from the airport. She comes, it's incredible. All right, so good evening. While everything is going around, so here's what I would like to be able to do, Amir Hashem, over the little bit of time that we have together, which is to focus a little bit on the deeper meaning of Pesach. Every single Yom Tiv has an avoda, and every single Yom Tiv has some deeper component to it. The great challenge in general with Judaism is often it's easy to lose oneself in the details. And the truth is, if there's one Yom Tiv where you could get so easily lost in the details, of course it is, wild guess, Pesach. Right? Pesach, there's so much to do. Pesach, there's so much to focus on. Pesach, there's so much to change on an external level that sometimes we forget that the avodah of every single Yom Tiv is to change something internally. Remember again, external change in Judaism is only there to be a catalyst and a platform for some type of personalistic internal change. So when it comes to the Yom Tov of Pesach, what is our avodah? What is it that we're supposed to focus on? So if you take a look at number 1 on your sheet, so you'll notice again, the Gemara, Chazal already addressed this. And so the Gemara says, number 1, a Gemara from Maseches Pesachim, B'chol dar v'adar chayiv adam liros es atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa miMitzrayim. We're all familiar with this Gemara. In every generation, a person is obligated to see himself as if he left Egypt. Shne'emar v'yigadet al bin chavayom or leimar ba'avur zeh asa Hashem li b'tzeisi miMitzrayim. So this is the mandate. In other words, in general in Judaism, we do not simply celebrate historical events, but rather we tap into historical events in order to be able to bring out some type of contemporary relevance. So the whole avodah, the whole thing of Pesach, is I am not celebrating the fact that thousands of years ago some Jews went free, but the whole avodah of Pesach is I am supposed to see myself as if I am one of those individuals who left Egypt. What's the problem? I'm sorry? We don't feel that. You don't feel that way, right? Why not? Right. So in other words, this is one of these things where we're all familiar with it. I got it. The whole point is to feel as if I'm leaving Mitzrayim. But I don't understand. How am I supposed to feel like I left Egypt? I have no frame of reference for Egypt. I have no frame of reference for that experience. I have no frame of reference for slavery, at least the kind of slavery that our ancestors went through. So how am I supposed to experience something for which I have no frame of reference? Just to illustrate this, it's the same reason we have difficulty connecting with the Beis HaMikdash. Right? Every single day in davening, we go ahead. We do Shalayim Ircha Barachamim Tashuv. We ask the Kadosh Baruch Hu to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. Tisha B'Av, we sit and we mourn. What's the greatest challenge of Tisha B'Av? The greatest challenge? Wow, such a group of Nashon Tzidkanios. No one has a problem with Tisha B'Av. Okay, I'll tell you. I'll be the... Hey, so again, the biggest challenge is mourning for something for which you have no frame of reference. You want me to mourn for a bit... Come inside. Right? You want me to mourn for a Beis HaMikdash? Right? You want me to mourn for a Beis HaMikdash? How am I supposed to mourn for a Beis HaMikdash when at the end of the day, I have absolutely no frame of reference for it? how are we supposed to relate to it in any type of significant way? So it's the same thing by Mitzrayim. How am I supposed to relate? How am I supposed to feel like I left Egypt when I have no frame of reference? So I want to show you something amazing. Take a look at number 3. So this is the question that we are going to focus on this evening. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. So this is the question we're going to focus on this evening. What does it mean, Chayiv Adam? Thank you very much. What does it mean? Chayiv Adam liros es asmil ki yatzim mitzrayim. How we're supposed to see myself as if I left Egypt. So remember again, when it comes to Pesach, right? Remember again, the arch enemy of the Jew during the Pesach season is this everyone's first Pesach? Is this new? I should start maybe 101. Chametz, right? Chametz is one of the most unique prohibitions. Why? There is nothing like chametz. Remember, there are a total of, really we'll call it 6 prohibitions associated with chametz. Number 1, you can't eat it. Number 2, you can't own it. Number 3, you can't have mixtures containing chametz. You can't have chametz seen in your possession. You can't have chametz found in your possession. And fascinatingly enough, chametz is asr ba'ana. You're not even allowed to get benefit from chametz. Now the truth is, this is unlike any other prohibition we have, but there's even one big one. See, there are other prohibited food items. But what's interesting about chametz, what's unique about chametz? It's unique. It's permitted 51 weeks out of the year. Right? Yet something that is permitted the overwhelming majority of the year, for that 1 week of the year, is treated with an overwhelming sense of severity. Again, can't eat it, can't own it. No mixtures, can't see it, can't possess it. It is forbidden to derive any level of benefit from chametz. Why? What's so bad about chametz? What's the problem with chametz that literally we have to fundamentally distance ourselves in such a dramatic way? So if you take a look at number 3, there's a beautiful say from Mesilos Ba'ara Chasidus, where he writes over here as follows. He says something amazing, incredible observation. Hine, ha'hevdel ben chametz lematzah, hurak ba'os achas. I thought this was an incredible observation. There's only one difference between chametz and matzah. What's the difference between chametz and matzah? One letter. One letter, right? Because after all we know, ki ha'osios mem tzadik shavos b'shteihen. Chametz and matzah both have a mem and both have a tzadik. So wherein lies the difference? V'rak ba'os hashlishes yesh hevdel. It's only in the 3rd letter where there's a fundamental distinction. Shebechametz yesh ches, or b'matzah yesh hey. So I decided to just put some images on the paper to keep you awake in Meretz Hashem, right? You can see there's a ches and there's a hey. So chametz has a ches, chametz has a ches, matzah has a hey. That's the only distinction. One letter. Interesting observation, but so what? So let me show you something incredible. Take a look at number 4. The Gemara says, why is it that when it's part of a much longer Gemara, I'm just giving you a little snippet, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, the Gemara explains, was created with the letter Hey. Why is it that Hashem created the world with the letter Hey? What's unique about Hey? He says, listen to this, because the Hey is like a portico. What does it mean that Hey is like a portico? So ultimately, again, because the way the world works is like this. If you look at Hey is a construct, Hey is a framework. The Ribono Shel Olam created a framework for this world. And in that framework, there's Torah. In that framework, there's mitzvos. And if you live within the framework, then what? Then you're within the framework. Do you have to live in the framework? Do you have to? No. You could choose to leave. As such, Hey has an opening. Because if you choose to exit the framework, you can do so. You can do so. He says, so why not? But this is actually also kidding aside. This is why I put the image here. So take a look at the image Hey for just a moment. Right? So Hey has an opening. The opening that the Gemara is referring to is really the opening on the bottom. And what that shows is, why is Hey, which is the primary letter of creation, open on the bottom? To show us, says the Gemara, that if a person wants to leave the framework, if a person, the incredible thing we know is you can't force people to have a relationship with you. This is one of the most important things in parenting. This is such an incredibly important thing. You can't force your children to like you. You can't force your children to love you. You can force respect. That you can do. But you can't force relationship. But if you think about this for just a moment, think about the following. V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha. What's the mitzvah? V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha. What's the mitzvah? What's the mitzvah? To love Hashem. What's the problem with saying that the mitzvah you have to as Hashem Elokecha is to love Hashem? What's the problem? You can't legislate love. You can't legislate love. You ever tried in life to tell someone that they have to love you? Right? I'm not going to take a show of hands, right, Brian? Right? It doesn't work. It doesn't work. You can't tell someone you have to love me. Yet God says to me, you have to love me. And that's why Rashi HaKadosh says something amazing. Rashi says, V'yavtas Hashem Elokecha is not a mitzvah to love. Rashi says something amazing. Rashi says, Aseh dvarav me'ava. Rashi says it's a behavioral mitzvah. Rashi says, V'yahavtas Hashem Elokecha means when you serve Hashem, you should do it in a way that looks like you love Him. I was once teaching this to a group of seminary girls, and one of the girls said, we call it fake it till you make it. Meaning that pretend like you love God, act in a way that it looks like you love God, and what will happen over time? What will happen? Something amazing happens. What happens? You'll feel it. You'll feel it, which in general, it's not our topic for tonight. And Meretz Hashem, if I'm zocher to come back again, not a week before Pesach. But in Meretz Hashem, this whole idea in general about how feeling is shaped by action is so incredibly important. There's such a misunderstanding because people think like feelings occur and then feelings inform actions. It's the exact opposite. If you want to feel a certain way, you have to behave a certain way. You want to love Hashem, you want to be in love with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, aseh devarav mi'ava. Serve Him in a way that looks like you love Him. And it's true in every single other relationship. So ultimately, again, the Gemara says over here, God created a framework. You don't have to stay in it. If you choose to leave it, you could leave it. That's why the bottom of the hay is open. Hay is the word of creation. So the bottom is open to show we're not trapped. We're not trapped. Hashem says, I'd love to have a relationship with you. If you don't want it, if you want to drop out, the bottom is open. So listen to this. So the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, why does hay have a suspended leg? Right? So again, if you look right by source 3, you can see the hay. Hay, as opposed to ches, which is closed on 3 sides, hay has a suspended leg. And there's an opening between the roof of the hay and the leg of the hay. Says the Gemara, why is that? My time matalya kare, second line of number 4. The hadar b'tshuva ma'aylile. To teach us that if you want to do tshuva, if you fall out of the bottom of the hay and you want to come back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's a way back in. There's a way back in. I asks the Gemara, but I don't understand. V'leil bahach. I don't understand. Why do I need another opening? Right? What should be the way back in? What should be the way back in? The same way you fell out. I fell out of the bottom. Let me go back in the bottom. To which the Gemara says, no. Tshuva doesn't really work that way. He says, Lo mistaya milsa. It's not going to work out. The Amrei Shlakish, Mai da Amar, Leleitzim Yod, Sulanosim Yitanchein, Balitar Misainosa, Balitar Posa. So let me tell you the rest outside. The Gemara essentially says, no, you could fall out the bottom of the hay, but if you want to come back, if you want to reinvigorate that connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're going to need to find a new way back in. You can't go back in the way that you fell out. And by the way, if you think about this, just from a relationship perspective, if you think any relationship that has undergone trauma, you could fill it, whatever it is, a marriage, a friendship, if you want to repair that trauma, you can't go ahead and simply kind of put things in reverse, right? This is like it's a big mistake that people often make in shalom bayis, where let's say a couple has a shalom bayis issue, they've addressed the shalom bayis issue, and sometimes, I think it's more often the men, more than the women, are like, okay, right, so we're good now, right? Like, we're good. Right, we worked it out. Right, we worked it out. I apologize. I even like a little tear. Right, we're good. And often the other part is like, no, we're not good. We're not good. We could work on repairing this, but you can't just simply come back up the bottom of the hay. In other words, we're going to have to figure out a different way now to rethread this relationship. We're going to be fine. We could get it back on the rails, but it's going to require a different entry point. It's the same thing with Hashem, the Gemara is saying. You fall out the bottom of the hay, okay, it happens. All of us fall out the bottom of the hay at some point in time. The beautiful part is, there's a way back in. But the way back in is something different than the way ultimately, again, you fell out. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. So let's analyze this. Let's analyze this Gemara just a little bit. So now what the Gemara tells us is really an incredible yesod, which is the world is created with hay, because hay ultimately, again, is the letter that represents tshuva. The letter hay ultimately tells us that even if you have a falling out with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, tshuva is ultimately possible. So let's talk about tshuva for just a moment. I know it's not Elul and it's not almost Rosh Hashanah, but you're going to see why Pesach is a Yom Tov of tshuva as well. So what is tshuva? What is tshuva? One of my favorite svarim on the topic of tshuva is a sefer called Ala Tshuva. Ala Tshuva is a compilation of Rabbi Soloveitchik's tshuva drashas. The Rav used to give a tshuva drasha for 3 to 4 hours. I'm going for till 9:35. Don't worry, right? So, right, the Rav used to go for 3 to 4 hours on a tshuva drasha. So the fact that a rabbi can speak for 3 to 4 hours, that's not the chiddush, right? What's incredible? What's incredible? People listened. People listened, right? And I guess there were also no phones or anything like that, right? So in other words, people listened and they were just attentive to it. So Rabbi Soloveitchik's tshuva drashas were compiled in a sefer called Ala Tshuva. And the Rav in this sefer discusses the dynamic of tshuva. Specifically, what is tshuva? And for me, I want to share with you what I think are probably two of the most moving pieces in the entirety of the body of rabbinic literature. Take a look at number 6 on your sheet. So the Rav writes, Hargosha satshuva shaval tshuva kazeh hi mugbelas. Tshuva perusha chazara. So the first thing Rabbi Soloveitchik does is give us a definition. Remember again. How do we normally translate tshuva? Repentance, right? Which is not false, but repentance, which is usually like ashamnu, bagadnu, gazal, that's part of tshuva. That's part. Rabbi Soloveitchik says, what is tshuva? Well, what does the word tshuva mean? Lashuv means to return. To return. What am I returning to? He says, la'an hu chozer. What am I going back to? Hu chozer l'nakudas hamotzi sheba amad lifnei sheyatz l'derech hachatoim u'mashahaya ben saim kilu lohaya. Rabbi Soloveitchik says something amazing. I'm going back to what I used to be. Tshuva is the process by which I go back to my original self. I go back to who I was. That's the process of tshuva. Now hold on to this for just a moment. Take a look at number 7. So Rabbi Soloveitchik continues on this, and he says as follows. Now he does something absolutely amazing. Look at this. Hagaguim lazeh. Now he describes over here this notion of yearning for something that you have lost. Imagine for a moment you had something, and then you lost it. Those ga'aguim, that yearning for that which you've lost is so incredibly intense and profound. Rabbi Soloveitchik describes this. He says, Hagaguim lazeh, shahalach ve'enenu kashim kisha'ol. Yearning for something that you had and now have lost and can't regain is the most painful thing in the world. He says, Hanefesh yotzis mi ga'aguim. I apologize, but it's a little bit of a longer source, but you'll see Rabbi Soloveitchik's, his wording is so beautiful and so profound, I didn't want to paraphrase it. So he says as follows, Hanefesh yotzis mi ga'aguim ad she'efshar le'izgaber aleihem. Sometimes a person could go out of their mind with yearning to reclaim that which I've lost. He says, this is so beautiful. Hine lifnei Rosh Hashanah ze amal lefanai b'dimyoni avi agon zatzal. Rabbi Soloveitchik says that, before Yomim Noraim, I saw in my mind's eye an image of my father. His father was Rav Moshe Soloveitchik. I saw in my mind's eye my father. Hu haya Rabbi umori hayochid shili b'chol yemei chayei. Rabbi Soloveitchik, he only had one Rebbe his whole life. His one Rebbe was his father, Rabbi Moshe Soloveitchik. That was it. Achshov shitachti chayei lefanav va'amarti lo. So Rabbi Soloveitchik is telling us a conversation that he had with his father. Now his father already passed away. This is the conversation. Abba Mori, kama chidushim chidashte be'avodas Yom Kippurim. He tells his father, I've had so many new and novel thoughts in the sacrificial service of Yom Kippur. Besugya shel mitzvos lav lehanos niddu, behilchos shofar, bevade yesh b'neihem dvarim, shayisa merutza mehem, v'nena b'hem. Father, I know that there are ideas that I've come up with that you would have loved. Father, I know that there's Torah that you would have loved. If you skip a little bit, he says, Kacha dibarti ela b'dimyoni. I spoke to my father like this in my imagination. Im shiadati kimi pi avi lo eshma pam tshuva ladavar. But no matter how much I talk to my father, I know that I'll never hear anything back from him. Hay kama hayisi no sein lu yacholti lahachlef imo dvarim b'chidushay Torah v'lu lechamesh dakos bilvad. Rabbi Soloveitchik says, what I wouldn't give to talk to my father for 5 minutes. what I wouldn't give for 5 more minutes with my beloved father. Aval yadati, but I know. Ki admus ha'ahuva shehaisa krova kol kach elai hu ata kol rechoka. But I know that the father, the physical father that used to be so close to me, is now so far away. Look at his wording. V'halev mispotzeitz miga'aguim le'efsharos shel chamesh dako shel sicha shelo yadanu tamid laharich es melo harka kasher yadan hasimano. And what I wouldn't give for 5 minutes of conversation. Those same 5 minutes that I had so many opportunities when my father was alive, but I didn't take adequate advantage of it. And now that he's gone, what I wouldn't give for 5 minutes. Look at the left-hand column. And this is where Rabbi Soloveitchik becomes even more personal. Vuadin bi'imi u'bi'ishti. And the same thing is with my mother and my wife. Rabbi Soloveitchik lost his mother and his wife within the same year. With my mother and my wife, Lifnei yomim achadim, shuv yashafti v'kasafti es drashas hatshuva hashnosis. So Rabbi Soloveitchik writes, just a few days ago I sat down to write my Shabbos Shuvah drasha. Tamid hayisi medaber ala im ishti. Very interesting. He said, I always used to speak about it with my Rebbetzin. Whatever I was going to speak about for Shabbos Shuvah, I always went over with my wife. He haisa ozeresli begibush harayonos. She used to help me with formulation of ideas. Bilitusham, with their articulation. Gamashana. So this is incredible. Rabbi Soloveitchik says, telling us a conversation that he's having with his wife, who's no longer alive. Gamashana kasafti es hadrasha. This year I wrote my drasha. Kishani sho'elas, I asked my wife, Ulai tucha la'azarli. So I say to my wife, maybe you could help me. Shema kedai laharchiv o litzamsein ra'ayon zeh o achar. Maybe I should expand on this, or maybe minimize this. Shema lahadgish nekuda plonis. Maybe I should stress something else. And Rabbi Soloveitchik writes so heartbreakingly, Sha'alti, I asked, aval kol ma'aneh lo ba. But I received no answer. Efshar shahaya had kol l'sheilasi. Maybe my wife's neshama answered me back in a whisper. Aval hu nivla imashiv haruach be'ilanos ve'elai lo sagia. But her whisper got caught up in the rustling of the trees, and it never came to me. He ends, Kol adam ne'emad b'mei chayiv lenochach imus tragizeh shal ga'aguim. Rabbi Soloveitchik says, we all have these tragic yearnings, what he calls ilu yacholti, if only I could. If only I could. See, he's describing over here the if only I could in terms of loved ones. And everybody experiences this. If only I could have another 5 minutes. If only there could be one more conversation. If only I could say that thing that I meant to say, but for whatever reason never got around to saying. That's the tragedy, the inherent tragedy of the human condition. But Rabbi Soloveitchik says something absolutely amazing. He says, Ilu yacholti, this if only I could get back to what was, is not just a concept in terms of our relatives, in terms of our loved ones, but it's a concept that applies to the self as well. See, what Rabbi Soloveitchik is highlighting over here is something incredible, which is the concept of tshuva is a process by which I reclaim my former self. One of the fundamental distinctions between Christianity and Judaism is, you didn't come to the wrong shiur, right? One of the fundamental distinctions is how do you view the default inherent nature of man? From the perspective of Christianity, man is inherently evil, and it is man's job in this world to overcome and to battle that inherent evil. Judaism believes just the opposite. Man is inherently good. Man is inherently good. So if I'm inherently good, what's my job in life? What's my job? Don't mess it up. That's it. You see, we go through life and we think I have to acquire good. You don't have to acquire good. All the good you need is already in you. It's already there. You know, there's a beautiful sefer by the Piazetzna. Everyone knows the Piazetzna for Eish Kodesh. Right? For the Rebbe wrote drashas. He gave drashas during the years of the Warsaw Ghetto. They were written down and ultimately again published after the war in a sefer called Eish Kodesh. The Rebbe wrote another sefer. The Rebbe wrote a couple of svarim. One of the sefer is called B'nai Machshava Tova. And actually, this sefer, I gave a shiur on this on Thursday nights in my shul. It's an incredible, incredible sefer. It was a group of the Piazetznas Talmidim came over to him, and they said, Rebbe, we want to grow as a group. There's a power in having like a growing group. You could grow as an individual, but sometimes again, people think that it's like AA that discovered the power of, growing together as a group, right? It's true, but the truth is we had it before also. The notion of a chabura, the notion of being part of something so you could be with people who are growth oriented and you push them and they push you. See, he wrote this sefer called B'nai Machshava Tova, in which he outlines, here's the process for group self-actualization. And in this sefer, I'm not going to do it because we don't have time, but in this sefer, the Piazetzna discusses this idea of the inherent good we possess. He talks about Shabbos. He says, and specifically about Shalosh Shuddis. Because Shalosh Shuddis, we know as Rav Shalosh Shuddis is the highest point of Shabbos. It's the Holy of Holies. If you look at Shabbos like a wedding, right? So the Svarim bring down that Shabbos, that Shalosh Shuddis is the Yichud room. Right? It's the first moment when Chassan and Kala are together as husband and wife. That's Shalosh Shuddis. So the Piazetzna says, what do people often think about during Shalosh Shuddis? What do people think about during Shalosh Shuddis? When is Shabbos over? Right? And now it's summertime, like when is Shabbos over? All right, or whatever. I mean, you think about the tuna fish, the egg salad, whatever it is. The Piazetzna says, do you know what's happening inside your neshama during Shalosh Shuddis? Do you know what's happening? Your neshama has been freed from the shackles of weekday mundane living. And your neshama is literally again being held by the Ribono Shel Olam. God is holding me, and I'm embracing God back. And I'm saying, I never want to leave you. And He's saying, don't ever leave me. And there's like this incredible spiritual intimacy between myself. I'm thinking, I hope there's more tuna left. Right? That's on the outside. But on the inside, there is this dramatic tidal wave of spirituality. The Piazetzna says that's because all the good you need, it's already there. It's already there. You don't have to find good, right? You don't have to go ahead and absorb more external good and internalize it. You just have to reclaim that which is already yours. Do you know what the great challenge of life is? We go ahead and we start out so pure. And then what happens? See, it used to be, you could say, then we used to say, you hit the age of 17 and you become complicated. Now it's 4, right? You hit the age of 4 and we become so complicated. I tell this story often, but to me it's one of my favorite stories. In Baltimore, they had this ice cream truck that was going, a kosher ice cream truck, and during the summertime. So whenever we used to sit down for dinner, we used to hear the jingle, do they have this in Florida? Yeah. Okay, good. Right? So we'd be sitting at the table, and my youngest, my daughter, would be like, Tati, let's go get ice cream. We just sat down. I was like, tomorrow. Fine. So finally one day it was enough. Fine, we go. And what happens? So I see it's turning onto the block. This was the most pathetic excuse for an ice cream truck I've ever seen. Essentially what it was a 16-seater van with an air conditioning unit, stooped in the back of it, right? The windows were out and this was it. And I'm like, I said, this is the most pathetic thing I've ever seen. And my little nechama was, Tati, it's so pretty. And I realized in that moment, I said to my wife, I wish I had Nechama's eyes. Because I realized, I'm so cynical. And I'm so sarcastic. I'm like, oh, that was a good one, right? I'll make fun of the Baltimore ice cream truck. And meanwhile, this little child who has untainted purity sees the beauty. And that's the beauty of children in general. The beauty of children in general, which, again, this is not a chinuch shiur, but this is why those of you who are raising children, keep your children sheltered from greater society as long as you can. As long as you can. It is not a mitzvah to immerse your children in greater culture. It'll happen. And when it does, it's a quick downward trajectory. Preserve that purity as long as you can. Because that's what it is. In that moment, I realized she's 10 times holier than I am. Because I've corrupted my inner holiness through a whole series of bad life decisions. And hers is perfectly intact. You see, the godless of the Jew is you don't have to absorb new holiness. You just have to reclaim that which already exists inside of you. What a different way to look at ourselves. You know, like sometimes people say the phrase, God never gives you a challenge you can't handle, right? So besides the fact that don't ever say that to someone who's struggling, right? Especially you might think that you're helping. It might be true. But now, by the way, it is true, right? It is true. Because what's the yesod of that? The yesod of that is whatever you need in life, whatever tools, they're in you. Now, you may not know how to access them. You may not know how to find them. You may not know that you even possess them, but they're there. It's true with tools. It's true with Kedusha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu essentially created us like, what is it? DIY? Right? Do it yourself. Anything and everything you need, you have. You have. It's there. It's there. What's the challenge in life? The challenge in life is we lose sight of who we are. It's like we wander away from our true inner self. We get lost along the journey of life. And now if we come full circle, we understand what's tshuva? What's tshuva? See, this is incredible. People think, when you think about tshuva, I say, okay, tshuva. I say tshuva, you think? Repentance. Okay, come on, that was low-lying fruits, right? Generally, again, for tshuva, when people think about tshuva, people often think about like, what am I going to take on? What am I going to take on? What you're going to take on is something very nice. That's not tshuva. Tshuva is the process where I say, how do I reclaim the beautiful, innocent parts of my personality that I have lost over the journey of life? And all of us have lost beautiful things over the journey. That's tshuva. Tshuva is a return to the self. Tshuva is a return to me, because you know what? A lot of times, most times in life, I'm not the real me. I'm not the real me. I'm the me that society wants me to be. I'm the me that my career wants me to be. I'm the me that social pressure wants me to be. I'm not the real me. I'm not the real me. The process of tshuva is identifying what have I lost along the journey of life, and ultimately how could I go ahead and reclaim it. And once you understand this, take a look at number 8. There's an incredible idea just to show you how this process works. So in Az Yashir, right? Pesach, the pinnacle of Pesach, of course, is Shvi'i Shal Pesach, the 7th day, Kriyas Yamsuf. So remember again, the pasuk says in number 8, Uberuach hapecha ne'ermu mayim. Translation, you have it over here, with the breath of your nostrils, the water were heaped up. What's the imagery there with the breath of your nostrils? What's the imagery? Right? Oh, so excellent. So the truth is, the simple imagery is just seems like HaKadosh Baruch Hu like breathed on the water, and it split. But the Rebbetzin is right, which is the word af also means anger. There is an incredible piece by Rabbi Yisrael Lebrajin, the Heilige Rishner, and the Rishner says as follows. The Rishner quotes the Medrash, and the Medrash says that when Hashem created the world, He said to the sea, here's the deal. Do your thing, right? Do your thing as a sea. But at some point in time in the future, the Jewish nation is going to stand by your banks, right? By the banks of the Red Sea. And when you see the nation, I need you to split in front of them. I need you to split. Okay, so if you're the sea, what's the logical question to ask? How will I know? Right? In other words, okay, fine, you're God, I'll listen to you, but how will I know when to split? So the Medrash said that HaKadosh Baruch Hu went ahead and showed the sea an image, a picture of Klal Yisrael. When you see these people split. Fast forward, Yetzias Mitzrayim, we leave Egypt, it's the 7th day after we left, Klal Yisrael standing by the banks of the Red Sea. And what's not happening? The sea is not splitting. Says the Medrash, the Ribono Shalom appears to the sea and he says, see, we had a deal, right? We had a deal, you're supposed to split. And what does the sea say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shalom? Do you see these guys? The picture you showed me was a picture of tzaddikim, was a picture of righteous men and women who are together looking to make themselves better, looking to grow, looking to self-actualize. These guys are fighting. They're fighting with each other. They're fighting with Moshe. I'm not splitting for them. And so the Medrash says, Beruach hapecha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, if you're not going to split yourself, I'll split you with anger. But what is Medrash trying to highlight? You see, do you know what the most damaging part of 210 years of Egyptian servitude, the most damaging part is we lost our sense of self. We no longer resembled who we really had the ability to be. We no longer resembled our true self. So by the time that we stand at the sea, what happens? The sea doesn't want to split. Because the image that HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed the sea of who we were versus who we were at the time of the actual standing at the sea were two disparate images. And therefore the sea refused to split. But watch, let's take a look at number 9. But just the Gemara Masechah Sota says, Hayar Emer Omer, Kisha'amdu Yisrael alayam, Hayushvatim menatzchim zeh im zeh. Ultimately, again, when Klal Yisrael was standing by the banks of the Red Sea, the Shvatim, the tribes, were fighting with each other. Zeh Omer, ani yorei tchil al yam. This tribe said, I'm going in first. V'zeh Omer, ani yorei tchil al yam. So, what's happening over here? What's happening in this Gemara? What are they fighting about? What are they fighting about? Who gets to go first? What? So, just a second ago, they were yelling at Moshe, Hamibli ein kvarim be'eretz Yisrael. You took us out here to die. Right? They're complaining against Moshe, complaining against God, and now they're arguing about who's going to have the schus to walk into the water first. What's the message? The message is you could reclaim your sense of self. The message is you could reclaim your former self. The message is no matter how many wrong turns I have made in life, I could put the pieces back together. I could reclaim the person I used to be. And by the way, sometimes I was never even aware of that person or that great person. I could reclaim that which has been lost over the journey. That's what happened over here. We stand at the banks of the Red Sea. The sea won't split because the sea doesn't recognize us. And a moment later, the Shvatim have self-actualized. A moment later, the Shvatim reclaimed their former holiness to the point that they're arguing about who's going to get to go into the sea first. And now we understand the distinction between chametz and matzah. Let's go for a circle. Remember again, there's seen chametz and matzah? Difference in chametz and matzah? Ches and hay. Ches and hay. So now we understand. What's your seen ches and hay? What does the letter ches tell you? What does the letter ches tell you? That once you fall out, what? You cannot come back. The letter Hey tells you, when you fall out, you absolutely can get back in. Now, granted, you have to take a different way in, but you can always find a way back in. And now we understand the severity of chametz. See, do you know what chametz represents? Chametz represents the mindset that says, once you've messed up in life, you are beyond salvation, you are beyond repair. Once you went ahead and you abdicated your personalistic holiness, and once you made wrong turns in life, sorry, there's no rerouting, right? There's no alternate route. You're done. That's chametz. That's the ches. There's one way out, right? You fall out, if you can live inside the ches, fantastic. But the moment you fall out the bottom, you are done. You are done. Chazal came along and said, for 7 days, for 8 days for us, right? For 8 days, no chametz. Because the most toxic mindset that a person could possess is thinking that you are beyond salvation and beyond repair no matter how many mistakes you've made in life. What's the mitzvah? What's the mitzvah on Pesach? Matzah. It's the hay. What does hay say? Hay says, can you fall out? Absolutely. But what? There's always a way back in. Now, there's a caveat, right? What's the caveat? The way back in is going to take a lot of effort, right? Because remember, again, by the hay, the opening is back towards the top. So you fall out the bottom, you got to make your way right back in, which means you could reclaim your former self. You could make your way back in. But at the end of the day, it's going to take a lot of work. And that is the entire essence of it. You ever have a moment preparing for, I don't know if people here go away for Pesach, stay home for Pesach, but if you stay home for Pesach, you ever have a moment where you're cleaning and you ask yourself, what am I doing? Okay, good, you have, right? Like, what kind of God wants me to do this, right? What is going on over here? And by the way, it's okay. The beautiful part about Yiddishkeit is we're encouraged to ask questions, even if they sound a little bit strange, because it is. Right? Like, I think about this, like, I don't know, if I didn't have to clean for Pesach, I don't know, I could be doing so much chesed, I could be doing so much good. If I didn't have to worry about lining the refrigerator, right? Or cleaning out the freezer, or how to still get rid of the stuff that's left over from Shalach Manas. Like, I could, what is the whole Yisod of Pesach? The whole Yisod of Pesach is, if you work hard, you can see results, right? There are people who, for them, order Seder, specifically like in their kitchen, is like the most important thing in the world, right? There's got to be Seder. There's got to be Seder. This has to be, and what happens Pesach? What happens Pesach? Everything is turned upside down. It's incredible, right? So to the point, I a number of years ago, I stopped. I try to only use plastic flatware on Pesach because inevitably, like it happened a couple of years, I was taking stuff out of the wrong drawers, and my wife was like, "Did you just move in? You just moved?" So again, I'm like, "No, I'm just a creature of habit." So this is where the whole yesod of Pesach is to show that you could turn your life upside down. So if you could turn your kitchen upside down, you could turn your personality upside down. If you could turn the rhythms of everyday living inside out, then you can do anything. That is the whole yesod of matzah. We all fall out of the bottom at some point in time, but just never think that because you fall out of favor with God, or because you fall out of favor with yourself, because you fell at the bottom of the hay, that you can't get back in. There's always a way back in. There's always a way to reclaim that which we have lost, and that's why you can't eat chametz. Chametz is a no-no. And by the way, you not just can't eat it, you can't eat it, you can't own it, you can't see it, you can't have it in your possession, you can't even get benefit from it, right? If I had $1 for every single pet food shaila that I got regarding Pesach, I'd be able to go on a Pesach program. In other words, right? Right? Why? No chametz, not for the fish, not for the dog, not for the this. No chametz anywhere in life because chametz, ches, it's toxic. It's toxic because it is so easy to fall into a ches mindset, so easy to fall into a chametz mindset. Say, I'm down and out. That's it. No getting back up for me. Matzah says, yeah, you fell out the bottom. Okay, let's roll up your sleeves. Let's get to work. And let's find a way back to reclaim yourself. And this becomes the avodah of Pesach. And now, if we just go full circle, this becomes chayiv adam liros es atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim. You have to break it up a little bit differently. See, we read it as one phrase, right? It's going back now to source number 1, right? Remember again how we started? Whatever, long ago, 40 minutes ago. How did we start? We said, Chayiv Adam Liros es Atzmo Kilu Hu Yatsa Mimitzrayim. Right? So, I'm supposed to see myself as if I left Egypt. That's nice, but I have no frame of reference for Egypt. Perhaps you have to just put the comma in a little bit of a different place. What's the avodah of Pesach? Chayiv Adam Liros es Atzmo. Semicolon. What's the avodah? Find yourself. Who are you? You know, we live in a time where there is such a push for overwhelming conformity. And right now, I'm not even talking about like in the outside world. I mean, even in the firm world. You know, I'll just tell you, my daughters would kill me for this, but they're not here. When one of my older daughters had an interview for seminary. So I heard her on the phone. She was calling a friend asking if she could borrow a pair of shoes and earrings. I'm like, Shefla, I get the credit card bill. You have shoes, right? and you have earrings. It's like, no, Tati, you have to wear these kind of shoes and this kind of pearl earring to the interview. So like, my first reaction was that I just wanted to hold her and say, I just want you to know, you're perfect the way you are. I didn't do it because it would have been awkward. You know, she's a teenager. It would have been very awkward. There's such a push for conformity, especially now you see it in the frum community, right? Again, everything has to look a certain, and by the way, there's a power in conformity. I want to be clear. There are positivities in conformity, healthy conformity, but not when conformity stifles a sense of self. In other words, we could all look the same. That's fine. You could dress the same. There is something to that. As long as it doesn't stifle your individuality. Who are you? Chayiv Adam Liros es Atzmo. Let me ask you this question. When you're leaving here tonight, if somebody were to stop you and they were to ask you, who are you? Who are you? When you ask most people, who are you? You know what they tell you? What do they tell you? Profession, if they have a profession, or again, who they're related to, right? In other words, I'm a mother, I'm a spouse, I'm a this, I'm a that. No, those are all incredibly important things. In other words, who you're related to is incredibly important. What you do for a living is incredibly important. When you strip that all away, who are you? Who are you? What are the midos you value? What are your goals and aspirations in life? How are you going to ensure that after 120, your life made a difference and it was a good idea for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to have created you? Who are you? Not where are you going, not where do you vacation, not where do you live, not what do you wear, not who you're related to, not how do you make money. What's your atzmius? What's your self? So the Gemara says, you want to know what Pesach is all about? Chayiv Adam liros es atzmo. To reclaim your sense of self. Because whether you recognize it or not, a lot of times in life, we lose sight of who we really are as individuals. Sometimes it's because you make mistakes. Other times also just because we're overwhelmed just with the details of life. Life is so busy and life is so chaotic, right? Somebody asks you, who is your essence, right? Who is your atzmius? Who are you? You're like, listen, I just want to sleep for 15 minutes uninterrupted, right? That's my atzmius, right? We're so overwhelmed in so many different ways that I don't have time to. But you have to make time. You have to make time. Because if you don't take time to figure out who your atzmo, who you are at your core, what your essence is, you can run through life and not have had the opportunity to really maximize your potential. I have the opportunity to spend a lot of time with people in their final moments. And it is astounding and staggering to hear how many people express remorse for the lives they led. And I don't mean people like, I did this aveira, that aveira. It's happened a couple of times. Tell people it's not confession. I don't do that. Right? But people say I really should have focused on this. I really should have focused on that. Real, genuine remorse for not having maximized that. And good people who accomplished great things, who led beautiful, holy lives, who raised inspired mishpachos. Yet in those final moments when everything is stripped away, they recognize, you know what? I never really found myself. I was just so busy going through life and running around and this, that. That I never found the atzmo. And when I did find my atzmo, I made mistakes. I fell out the bottom of the hay. And I never knew that I could get back in. So I just spent my whole life on the outside of the hay, on the outside of the ches looking in. And I never realized that no matter how badly I fall, I can always get back in. That's chayiv Adam liros es atzmo. That's the avodah. So you want to know what the avodah is of Pesach? Avodah is of Pesach is when you get to the Seder. And I always tell people it's by the Seder. The Haggadah, people think you don't have to read the whole. I mean, you'll ask your Rav, but I'm saying, you technically, I tell my Baba, you don't have to read the whole Haggadah. Right? The Haggadah is a framework. I'm holding the Siddur, right? But the Haggadah is a framework. It's a framework. It's there to frame the evening, right? So there are people who have a Pesach Seder, good. Great. I said everything. You said everything, but you gained nothing. Shoshana has been in our Seder. So, Hashem, we actually say, we don't say a lot of stuff. Shoshana says most of it. I'm saying, right? We in French, right? So, we don't say a lot of the Haggadah. Because part of the Haggadah, part of the Pesach Seder is supposed to be like a contemplative experience. And I would also tell you that during the Haggadah, it's also okay to zone out a little bit. Don't fall asleep, right? But to zone out a little bit into your own mind. And to ask yourself, what's my atzmo? But more specifically, to kind of hone this in a little bit. What are the pieces of my spiritual persona that I have lost over the course of the journey of life? And how do I reclaim it? I used to be optimistic. And now, you know what? I've suffered a whole bunch of setbacks. So I no longer feel like I have the luxury of being optimistic. I used to have dreams, but so many of them were dashed. So I feel it's a waste of time to dream. And you'd be surprised how many of us walk around with those exact feelings. Reclaim the things that you've lost. Go back in. You fell out the bottom of the hay, or how many of us have made bad life decisions? A number of them, really bad life decisions. And really just bad decisions that didn't just impact me, impacted other people also. And sometimes when you're left holding the bag on those decisions, you feel like there's no way back in, but it's not true. The hay has an opening. Reclaim the self. Find your way back in, or otherwise stated. And if, by the way, and if it's chayim adam yirosas atzmo, if you find your atzmius, then what? Ki'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim. Because what's the greatness of our ancestors leaving Egypt? It's not the fact that they left Egypt. They didn't do anything. God did it. What was the greatness that they left Egypt? They reclaimed their lost sense of self. Remember, by the banks of the Red Sea, the sea would not split. The sea wouldn't split. But then they reclaimed their sense of self. They fought over who's going to go ahead and get to go in first. That's what happened. You say, yes, it's a story of people who lost everything. They fell out the bottom of the hay. But then they found the courage to find a way back in that upper opening. That's the story of Mitzrayim. And that's our observance as well. If you could find your atzmo, if you could reclaim, identify, what have you lost? What have you lost? And then ultimately, again, how could I regain it? How could I regain it? That's a Pesach. I'll just conclude with one last piece. You know, we hear stuff like this, and I think a lot of times a person thinks to themselves, it's so beautiful and so nice, but seems quite overwhelming. So I just want to end off with the following idea. There's a story that's told about the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh. And the Rebbe one time gathered his Talmidim, and he said to his Talmidim, I want to take you to go see how the purest of matzahs are baked. Talmidim say, great. So they load up the wagon, and they go to some house on the outskirts of town. The Rebbe positions them by the window, right? So they're standing at the window looking in. What do they see? They see a man with his wife, right, with dough, and they're kneading the dough, they're doing everything. Okay, everything looks fine. So they finish rolling out the matzahs. They leave it on the table, and the husband says to his wife, okay, I'll be back in a few minutes. I'm just going to fire up the oven. So what happens if you leave the dough and go to fire up the oven? It's chametz. So the Talmidim are looking at this. So the Rebbe says, this is like the holiest matzahs. So the Talmidim look at the Rebbe and say, Rebbe, maybe we got the wrong address, right? Waze took us to the wrong place. In other words, it's chametz. Hashem says, oh, I realize you can't see. And he goes ahead and he puts his hand over their eyes. And what do they see? That right after the man left the matzahs, a whole legion of malachim came down from Shamayim and kept on kneading the matzahs to ensure that they would not become chametz. The holiest matzahs. Why do I share this story with you? Because in life, all you have to do is start. And when the Ribono Shel Olam sees that you want something more, he helps you along the way. No different than a human parent. When a human parent sees that a child is putting in the effort, that a child is struggling, that a child is struggling in a good way, striving, so the parent says, okay, you're putting in the effort, I'm going to go ahead and help you out a little bit more as well. And it's the same yisod with the Ribono Shel Olam as well. You don't have to get to the finish line. You just have to start the race. And if you leave here tonight, we go into Pesach tonight, you say, you know what? I've lost a lot of things over the journey of life. Good things, good character traits, good midos, goals, hopes, dreams, aspirations, and I want them back. All you need to do is articulate that desire to find your atzmo, to find your atzmius, and the Ribono Shel Olam will help you the rest of the way. He'll send his malachim to knead your matzahs. He'll send his malachim to help shepherd us along a journey of success. We should be zocha mirtz Hashem. That our Pesach shouldn't just become, finding the pizza that tastes almost like real pizza. Right? Our Pesach should become something bigger. And just like our Pesach shouldn't just become about the cleaning. All of that is there, right? The cleaning, the preparation, turning your life upside down is just there to show you that, by the way, you could turn your life upside down. You could turn your life inside out. You could do it. And if you could do it with the kitchen, you could do it with your neshama. And if you could do it with your house, you could do it with your personality. And if you could do it with your pantry, then you could do it with your lifestyle as well. That's the whole avoda of Pesach. So we should be zocha mirtz Hashem to find the courage to identify the things that we have lost along the journey of life, to identify them, to roll up our sleeves, devise a plan to reclaim them, to make this a Pesach of Chayiv Adam Liros Es Atzmo, to really find our true self. And if we're able to do this, then we should be Zocha Meretz Hashem to see the actualization of the words of Chazal. Benisa Nigalu, Ubenisa Nasidu Nigal. We were redeemed thousands of years ago in this sacred month. And Halavai, maybe if we just push ourselves a little bit more, each of us doing our own personalistic Atzmius work, then we could be Zocha Meretz Hashem to come together to learn. Not here in beautiful Hollywood, but in Meretz Hashem together in a rebuilt Yerushalayim with a beautiful Bayis Shlishim here at B'Yameinu. Amen.